Hello everybody, this is Mithril Zenith, and welcome to what's going to be a recurring series of one-offs. Something I like to call my favorite games. Premise is really simple, really stupid, but whatever, here we are. This is going to be a series where I just go through and play some of my favorite games, talk about why I enjoy them, why I like them, why I think they're some of my favorites, how much nostalgia maybe plays into it versus actual quality, perhaps. This is Mordor: The Depths of Dejenol. This is a single-player dungeon crawler game that released in 1995. It is a not quite text-based exactly, but semi-text-based, semi-Windows dungeon crawler game, which is all about grinding up characters and getting deeper and deeper and further into the dungeon. As you can see right now, I have begun running with a new team. I have a duo. It is in... I should probably start at the beginning. But I have plenty of videos for that. I have tons of videos of this game on my channel. Speaking of which, if you do think this is interesting or want to hear about more of my favorite games, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more. If you have any other suggestions for things I could do, or suggestions or questions on why this game is my favorite, I'd love to talk about these, love to answer them. Leave those comments down below. Anyway, let's get to it. I have a giant warrior seeker and a ogre warrior scavenger. This has been a fun duo. No spells, no mages, no magic. The seeker has some resistance and some movement, and that's about it. Let's get to it. Let's go. So, Mordor. What is Mordor? Mordor is a game built off of the D&D 6 statistics: strength, intelligence, wisdom, constitution, charisma, dexterity. Not in the order you usually hear it in, but is what it is. In it, you level up endlessly. You grind. You explore a dungeon. This is the dungeon. It is a 15-floor map, 30 by 30 squares each floor. There are monsters in most every room. As you go deeper, the monsters get harder, the traps get more difficult to open, the dungeon environment itself gets more hazardous, and you keep ramping up the challenge the deeper you go. But the dungeon constantly respawns, and so the point of the game basically is like, okay, create your characters. You can party up to 4. I did a full run as a solo elf. You can check that playlist out on my channel. Start from next to nothing. Delve down to the very bottom of the dungeon. Explore, see what you can find, see what you can do. Learn the systems, master the systems, and use that mastery of the systems to your advantage. Something I've noticed that I really appreciate, and I should probably just get going instead of waving my hands and talking to someone who's not here. Something I really appreciate is I appreciate in games when mastery of the game creates more interesting and engaging content and allows you to appreciate the game more instead of solving the game and making it boring. I think that a lot of games, especially a lot of modern games, once you solve them, you know, they're only really fun in execution. But for a game like this, once you solve it, I mean, there's a lot of fun in the execution, but it leads to an interesting point. Mastery over a game is what's fun, going from a beginner to an expert level. And this is perhaps the best example of a game in which I went from a total beginner. I played the demo as a kid. I had no idea what I was doing. To now, I have the longest, most viewed Mordor series on the internet. Potentially the only Mordor series on the internet. I guess like 1 or 2 other people had like some random things of like, hey, I remember this game from my childhood. Oh boy, it's really hard. But I love this game, and I've basically become and gained a certain level of mastery over the game, such that I feel like I'm one of the few remaining like pioneers and knowledgeable people in this game community. A Discord was started up, and it's very... there's not a lot of people in it, I'll just leave it at that. But it's very interesting being able to say, hey, I came from nothing. I came from just playing this game casually, and then I learned from the legacy of knowledge left behind by everyone else, until suddenly I'm the new expert, and I'm the people who can answer questions and who people go to for, with questions for those answers. And it's a very odd feeling. It's a nice feeling, I'm gonna be honest with that. But it's a very odd feeling. It's definitely not something I expected, because I think unless it's a brand new game you're just getting on the ground floor of and you've already invested, like if it's a series, you've already invested in the series. If it's just a genre, you've already played a lot in that genre. I don't think a lot of people think, hey, I'm gonna be the expert of this game. This game is what I'm kind of gonna be known for. But to a lot of people, I'm the Mordor guy. I'm the voice of Mordor. I'm the face of Mordor. This is a significant basis of my channel was built on Mordor Mondays. Mordor Holy Crusade, The Adventures of Goody Gilthriel. A solo good elf. And it's just so silly to me, but it's so interesting because the depth of these systems is... at its surface, the game is a lot of very simple systems. I'm also searching for a wraith here because I've quested to find one. Otherwise, I would be going way deeper. But the depth of these systems, while not necessarily all that deep when you think about it, when you take a hard look at it, it's still significant enough to provide a lot of interesting gameplay, a lot of fun stuff to do, a lot of interaction. Something I love about this game, and something, if I find a wraith, I hope to show it off, is how your gameplay, it doesn't change drastically, but the number of things you have to consider when going to a deeper floor, a lower level, a deeper floor, drastically increases as you go. Like, drastically, but significantly. As things get more and more dangerous in unique ways. Like, for instance, I took a risk there opening that trap because fire guns often have ball and chains, which are a cursed item, which automatically latches onto you and reduces your strength and dexterity. There's a wraith. Cool. I can go on my merry way. Yeah, like I was saying, I love the feeling of slow but steady increase in difficulty within the same systems. That's kind of the bottom line of Mordor, of why I enjoy it, because there's a lot of games that increase their difficulty by introducing more systems on top of it, and that's fine. That's, it's what most games do. Mordor doesn't really have extra systems to add. Once you're level 40 or 50, as a player, you've experienced, to some degree, everything that the game has to offer in terms of player power, player content, or at least some form of it. Like, for instance, you'll level up and you'll unlock all your spells by level, character level 40 or something. You'll have unlocked all your spells, but as you level up, the spells get stronger, they cost less, down to actually more reasonable amounts, reasonable casting amounts. So there's always reasons to level up your spellcasters versus leveling up your fighters. You gain attack and defense, you can handle yourself better in melee combat, you handle yourself better in melee combat. You gain extra swings as you fight. You deal more damage. You take less damage. You take fewer hits. Get hit less often. You can use better equipment. And so there's always a reason to level up a melee class. Leveling up a magic class, if you're not using the spells, if you're just using it for support, you level it up as much as you need to get those support spell levels, and then you kind of go from there. The different guilds you have. There's like a dozen different guilds. Using movement spells is always terrifying, because if you miskey one thing, you're going to end up in a rock wall, and all your characters are going to be screwed. Because this is old school style teleportation, old school D&D style. If you teleport 1 inch too low into a rock wall, you die. But in this game, because death is a regular thing, death is inevitable. No, not inevitable, but death is a very common experience. You don't just die, you die in such a way, if you teleport directly into a rock wall, you die in such a way that, one, you have to be found by another player character. The in-game morgue can't find you. And then you also have to get resurrected using a very specific spell. And then once you're resurrected that way, you always have complications, which means your stats are drastically reduced, such that you are basically a crippled character from that point on. And it's terrifying, and it makes you terrified of movement spells. But at the same time, movement spells are the best way of getting around the dungeon, period. And there's so many, like, traps and weird things and uncomfortable things, just blocks. So many obstacles that you avoid by being able to just teleport around the dungeon, that they add the restriction, not necessarily on teleporting too much, but by saying, hey, if you're teleporting, you'd better know exactly where you're going. You're free to do whatever you want, man. But if you teleport wrong, you're worse than dead. And so that level of, like, hey, we're going to trust the player. The player's going to be able to totally break this open. But if they mess up, they're screwed, which means they're going to be terrified of doing it. It's something that I kind of love. It's like you think you've found an exploit, and then the exploit, deletes your character. It's like, okay. I love that about this game. I'm terrified of the game, but I love it because it's so fun. It's so unique. What other game does that? What other game tells you, hey, you're free to do this, you're free to skip everything, not everything, but you're free to skip whatever bits that you want to skip. But there's a danger and a cost to doing so. What other game formats itself like that? Granted, this game formats itself as a massive grind. You are going to spend hundreds of hours on every character, on every party you form. And I mean, I have pretty much the entire dungeon mapped out, but even I, what I don't have, what I don't do. But it's just so simple. It's so simple fun is what this game is to me. Simple fun. And that's why I love it. I have good memories with it. Part of, my currently, I think it's my third most viewed video on my channel, is my very first intro summary of this game, a brief intro to Mordor, the Depths of Dejenol. I was like 18 when I made that. That was like 10 years ago. I hate the way I sound. I sound so just... But it's... my opinions and views on things have changed a lot since then. But at the same time, it's my most viewed video. Third most viewed video. I love it. I love this game for what it gave me. It gave me an opportunity to just talk. I made a series on Mordor where I played a solo elf from beginning to end, but I, for the most part, just used it as an opportunity to talk, to say whatever was on my mind. Part of me needs that. And a big part of me doesn't need that because, since then, I'm married, I have a kid, my life has drastically changed from where it was. But Mordor's still here. And I still come back and play it to this day. Because it's fun, because I remember it, because I love it, because ultimately, at the end of the day, Mordor never changes. It's one of my favorite games. It's one of my favorites for a reason. Can I explain all the reasons why it's my favorite? Maybe, given enough time and effort, but ultimately, I just like it. I just really like it. It's one of my favorite games. Sue me. You don't have to like it. You don't have to understand. Just let me have the thing, you know? And for me, more than any other game, Mordor is that thing. It's the game that I love, that nobody else I've seen knows anything about, or if they do know about it, they're just like, that looks really old and really clunky, and why would I be interested in it? It's a relic of a bygone era, as they say. It very much is a game from a simpler time with a simpler mindset, but I still love it all the same. Mordor: The Depths of Dejenol is... it is what it is, and it is not ashamed to be what it is. It doesn't have to go for mass appeal. It doesn't have to impress you with its graphics. It doesn't have to have a really deep and confusing customization system or character generation. Yet somehow it does have one of the deepest character creation systems because it's simple, because it's so simple, but it allows you that flexibility and freedom to make the character the way you want within just a couple simple bounds. Heck, once I get back to town, I'm going to show you what character creation looks like. Just to give you a sense of this game is old. Must defeat a ruffian. Okay. Great. And by the way, yes, my characters' names are Gaius and Baelsar because I am nothing if not a hack for Final Fantasy XIV right now. Example character. Choose a race: human, elf, giant, gnome, dwarf, ogre, morlock, or Ciri, troll. Each race has stat restrictions, minimums, maximums, guilds that are allowed, guilds that are not allowed based on your alignments. Neutral can join thieves and healers, while good or evil can join, you know, ninjas and mages, and good can join paladins, evil can join villains. You know, it's simple. It's very simple. And then you look at, okay, what sort of information does the game give you to play it? Spreadsheets. Tables and spreadsheets, and that's it. Charts that you have to understand. What do these things mean? Who knows? These are the guilds they can join. These are their stats, age, experience, modifiers. They give you numbers and don't clarify any of the numbers. I hate that happens. We'll load this character to show you something. They give you stats, and then your stats become massive. They give you stats on items, and they don't tell you what they do. They just say, this is what it is. This is attack. This is defense. This is a number here that who knows what it means. It's a class, it's dagger, it's not class restricted. What does that mean? One-handed item, force wings, backstab. How does any of this work? The game doesn't tell you, it just asks you to figure itself out. And don't say read the manual. I have the manual. I read it through. It gives some extra information, but it does not tell you what all of these things do. It does not reveal itself. It does not give the calculations. It is a simple game at its core. It is what it says it is. It asks you to figure it out. It says, hey, I'm a video game. I've got a lot of numbers. I'm not going to tell you what these numbers are going to do. You're going to have to figure it out for yourself. And gaining mastery from knowing nothing to knowing everything is a journey that I have been on. And maybe it's just because of that journey. But because of that journey, I love Mordor: The Depths of Dejenol. It is one of my favorite games. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to hear more about my favorite games, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. If you want to learn more about Mordor: The Depths of Dejenol, I have plenty of playlists. I have a full run-through as a solo elf in which I discuss whatever comes to my mind. And I have a series of videos on tips and tricks that I got like halfway through and then kind of just stopped because I couldn't think of anything else and didn't just want to keep doing dungeon floor explanations. This game is a part of my life. It is a part of who I am and is one of my favorites, and thank you so much for allowing me to share it with you. This is Mithril Zenith, signing out.